Yo, my people, what's up? Welcome back to Shelf Stories, the channel that tells tales from games, books, and life. And welcome to the One Stop Co-op Shop podcast. I am your host, Jason. Thank you so much for stopping by for this latest game chat with friends. This man is part of my story as a podcaster. He may not know this, but he used to host the Board Game Design Lab podcast you may have heard of on the Dice Tower Network. He invited me on for a very early episode, and that was my first guest spot outside of my original podcast, which was Every Night is Game Night. So I always will be thankful to this man. I was riding with him. The man put out 300 episodes of that podcast for you to enjoy. But we're not talking about the podcast. We're talking about his game that is on crowdfunding right now on GameFound called Robomon. We have a playthrough of it. Mike does on the One Stop Co-op Shop. So we're doing this podcast in tandem. He is Gabe Barrett. Welcome to the show.
Jason, really glad to be here, man. Yeah, we've known each other a while. It's crazy how time flies. Like,
it's crazy, man.
You were on one of the early episodes, and then, 200, 300, however many episodes later, here we are doing another thing. And it's so cool to see how people kind of evolve and grow in the industry. You're doing some really cool things. I'm doing new things now. It's been fun to kind of see the journey.
We were just like, we just turned the podcast on. We were both talking like the combined cost of our microphones was under $100.
Oh, easily. And that included the stand, that included the cables, included the software. Yeah, it was
the Audacity that we were
on. Oh yeah, that was early stuff, man. And like now we've got a little bit better sound. Hopefully, got some nice
sound. You got
boom
I got my
microphone.
You got your big old thing. You've done a couple of designs at this point. So we are going to talk about Robomon, but I'll get to that in a little bit. This is about people. I want to get to know Gabe as a person. So when we were first connected, right? You were in Honduras and your teacher. So that was like you're very passion driven, and you were there for like a very mission driven orientation, and you picked up game design and game stuff as like, I gotta do something. So talk us through this, man. You're not in Honduras anymore, but take us back to the beginning of Board Game Design Lab, beginning of design, and let's start the story from there.
Yeah, for sure. So I was in Honduras almost 8 years. I went down there with my church. I used to work for a church in Atlanta, but I did all like the domestic stuff. I did like the homeless ministry stuff we were doing at the church. I did a lot of like stuff around the city where I was living and working, and I had no desire to do anything outside the country. Like nothing international. No, thank you. They don't have Chick-fil-A out there. They don't play the right kind of football. They don't speak English over there. I'm good. I'll stay home. And the guy that was my boss, get out of here, man. Warrior. The guy that was my boss at the church, he did all the international stuff. So he went to Kenya and India and Honduras, and he would lead these teams, and they'd go for weeks at a time. And I was so happy for him to go. Well, anyway, one fateful week, he was about to leave to go to Honduras, going to lead this team of about 20 people, and he had to back out a couple of days before they left. And so I ended up having to go in his place and lead this group of people I had never met before. I wasn't in any of the meetings or the training. I didn't know where Honduras was on a map. I didn't know what we were doing. All of a sudden I had to write some sermons because I was going to be preaching. It's like, it's just very frustrating scenario that I was not excited for. And the only reason I even had a passport is because I had played football in college and I had tried out for some Canadian football teams. And I was like, well, let me get a passport just in case, I ever get an opportunity to go to Canada.
And you played with Cam Newton, right?
Well, almost. So
almost.
I missed him by one semester. I graduated in spring of 2010. He came in the spring of 2010. They won a national championship that following fall. I missed a national championship and a run with Cam Newton by one semester. So anyway,
if y'all don't know who Cam Newton is, Google it.
Oh man,
not gonna catch you people up.
Goodness gracious! I mean, one of the greatest of all time for sure, Heisman Trophy winner. But
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so that's the only reason I had a passport. And anyway, I ended up on this trip down to Honduras, and I thought I was going for a week, and I ended up staying for 8 years.
Wow.
I ended up meeting my wife down there, and she's from Alabama. I had to go to Honduras and meet another girl from Alabama. It's just how crazy life is. And so anyway, I met this wonderful woman while we were there, and she was a missionary. And anyway, so we got married, and I moved down, and she was already in the process of adopting a couple little girls. And so I obviously came right into that process, and that was our life for a long time. And then that's before I was teaching. Then we were working at an orphanage there, had about 500 kids. It was just chaos. It was kind of crazy. It was organized chaos. It wasn't just like, bananas, but it was a lot. And the schedule was 3 weeks on, 1 day off. And most days I worked 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So 12-hour days, 3 weeks in a row. So I am kind of losing my mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at first I'm okay, but like after months and months and months of that, I'm kind of losing it. Like I'm a
Mm-hmm.
little overwhelmed, a little burnt out. And so game design actually was what I just started doing to not lose my mind. It was a way to kind of escape and think about other things. I started listening to the Ludology podcast, listening to the Plaid Hat podcast, and that was a good way to just kind of pass the time while I was working there at the orphanage and doing stuff with kids or doing stuff on the farm or wherever they had me that day. And so that's kind of how it all started. And then about a year and a half later, we moved to a different part of the country and we started working with the organization that helps kids like transition out of orphanages and get life skills and job skills and stuff like that. And then I got a job at the school, at the high school where I was teaching English. I did that for about 5 years. And so during that whole time, it was just game design was a great way to get my mind off of everything else. And then the podcast came out of once I had time, once I wasn't working 3 weeks on, 1 day off and actually had a little bit of free time, I was thinking, okay, I want to be part of the industry. I want to be involved in some way. There's no game stores here in Honduras. I can't like start a YouTube channel and start reviewing games or anything like that. Now, I definitely did not have the internet connection for a lot of things, but I had just enough internet to do a podcast. And so I had this idea about a game design show and what would that look like and something different than Ludology, different from other shows I was listening to. I thought there might be a kind of a hole in the market for what I was wanting and thinking about doing. And so I started off and I thought, hey, I'll do this for a little bit and we'll see what happens. And then 301 episodes later, it's just kind of crazy. And
I like your approach. I was very drawn to your approach because Ludology could be pretty high level.
Yeah.
Right. Very philosophical, very, that's Jeff Engelstein and like, and that kind of like thing of like, and I enjoy Ludology very, very much. I still listen. It's one of the few that I still listen to. It's funny, like you get more and more into the hobby, the less you actually consume at a bottom level and you kind of go at a different direction, but I never dropped off Ludology. But I have to admit, I don't learn a whole lot about actual on the table, hands-on prototype game design. What you did was you would have, like I came on to talk about like just rules writing, and you had people talk about like prototyping and publishing and like printing in China and like different mechanisms and worker placement and drafting, and like you really broke down on a level that almost made it feel like, oh, I could do this. And I really appreciated that in terms of what the design lab did.
Oh, absolutely. And that was one of my main goals, is just to kind of pull the curtain back and say, hey, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever situation you're in, if you have just the inkling of an idea of wanting to do this, you can. You're not going to be any good. Like it's going to take time. It's going to take experience and figuring things out and all that this kind of stuff. It's a journey. Like it's 100% an adventure and it's going to take a while. But let me find ways to break things down to a tangible level, so that when you're listening, you go, oh, I've got an idea. Oh, I could do that. Oh, it's actually not as complicated as I thought. And then kind of open, almost like paving the way for more people, right? And that's what I love about this industry. Like there's so many cool ways you can be involved. There's so many cool things that you can do that are so different from what other people are doing. If you want to make 5-hour long, really complicated rules, full of rules, war games, you can. If you want to make a 10-minute solo roll and write, you can. Like there's just so many opportunities. And if you want to do marketing, you want to do accounting, you want to do, logistics, like there's a million things you can do. And so many people in the industry are just like really cool people to talk to. And that's what I wanted to show, is like, this is such a cool hobby to be in. You have access to the Steven Spielbergs, of our
you had
hobby.
Jamie F. Stegmaier in episode 5. And like that, I know that dude.
yeah. I mean, he was the first episode. He was number 1.
Oh, he's number 1. Okay.
Number 1 and 301. So I did a nice little full circle. He was the first and the last. But, Rob Davio and Matt Leacock and Eric Lang and like just these amazing folks that would just come on the show and just share a wealth of knowledge. That's another thing I love. It's not like people are trying to hide all their trade secrets.
Right.
They're like, hey, this is how I screwed up. Here's, how I figured it out. Why don't you go ahead and start at the figured out part so you can, bypass all the time I wasted, and just trying to help people, and just kind of trying to raise the tide and not worry so much about keeping things close to the vest, and so, yeah, I just love the people in the industry. It's such a great hobby.
And then, so, as you were going, because I remember I was listening regularly at this time, you had launched the Final Flick tier.
Yeah.
That was your first game, I believe.
First one that I had published myself. I had, lots of others. I had prototypes and pitched to publishers and stuff like that. That was the first one that like actually made it out into the world. Yeah.
Flicking, a slow simple flicking type game. I think it had a Star Wars type theme or something like that.
Yeah, it was like a family 4X kind of game, but you're flicking dice. The dice are your ships, and you would flick them around this big old neoprene map galaxy, and you're like trying to land on planets and trying to blow each other up and collect resources. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun. It was, like a 45 to 60-minute 4X game, which is, kind of hard to pull off. And it was good. I look back on it, I'm like, okay, I would have done some things differently, but like, look, at the time, I was like, this is pretty good.
Yeah. And so it kept on rolling, So then Hunted was a game that we covered, and a series of games. Yep. Right. So tell the people just a little bit about Hunted. They could, if they could still get it.
Oh, absolutely. I've still got just a handful of copies left over. The Hunted, it's a series of solo games where basically you are a hero, a character, and you're basically dropped into a situation and you're trying to fight your way out. So there's one that's kind of like Die Hard, where you're trying to save your wife. You're going through this big hotel and trying to figure that out. There's another one that's kind of like Aliens, where you're this hero trying to get off this mining colony, and all these evil aliens are trying to eat you, before it blows up. There's another one that's kind of like Stranger Things, where you're these kids in the 80s, and there's like all these crazy things happening in your town. You're trying to figure that out before time runs out. I've got another one coming out at some point that's kind of like a fantasy, almost like a roguelike kind of game, where it's high fantasy and you're fighting through different levels and things like that. But it's a simple game. It's a solo game, 20 minutes to play, very quick rules. Mechanisms are very simple to understand. But it's been a lot of fun to work on. The art is amazing. I found a guy named Jorge that is just a phenomenal artist. And so it's just been a lot of fun to work on those projects. And then those projects have led to these other solo games. And it's just been a really cool journey.
So we're establishing the pedigree. Definitely like an evolution over here. So we have the podcast, and at some point you decided to move on from the podcast. Was it just time? 300 is a nice round number. I'm starting to, kind of feel it, or was it a conscious decision? Like, okay, I need to spend more time on game design.
Yeah. So it was a mixture of things. One, I'm a big fan of the Barry Sanders mentality of leave people wanting more, like retire a little early as opposed to hanging on a little too long. Right. And I don't think I was getting close to that necessarily. I still enjoyed the show. I never got to a point where I dreaded it. I never got to a point where I just didn't enjoy talking to people, where I was like, oh, I got to record another one. I got to do it. It never got to that point. I didn't want it to get to that point. That was one thing. But right around episode, I think it was 276, because that's when I surpassed Ludology in number of episodes. And that was a weird moment, because it's like this show that I had looked up to, the show that I'd kind of like, listened to forever, and then designed my show to be something different, to be an alternative, to be, kind of a different way to do it. But then they were always the one I was kind of chasing. And then when I passed them in episodes, it was like, let me just step back and rethink this. Like, what do I want to do? And that's why I just kind of thought, coming up, I'm pretty sure I'm going to move back to the US here soon. That means my job I'm going to change jobs. I've got another job in the States that I was doing during the summer, like this part-time homelessness ministry thing that I would lead mission trips. I knew that was coming to an end. Like, so many things about my life were changing and ending in good ways. Like, it wasn't anything bad. I was like, what if I just end the podcast too, change gears? Let's make everything new. Like, let's just start over from scratch with everything. And so I thought, let's do 301 episodes. That way I can say, yeah, I did over 300. I did over 300 podcast episodes, and I'm not lying. And let's try something new. And so that meant leaning into my publishing company and really figuring out, okay, what does it look like to spend a lot more time on this, to be able to focus more as opposed to kind of a side hustle, losing my mind because I've got too many things going on at the same time. And then also switching gears and like, what does it look like to do video instead of audio? And so I've been working on this like YouTube channel. I was hoping to launch this month, but RoboMind got pushed back. And so now it's looking like September that I'll launch some videos and try to like a little YouTube thing, and still talking about creativity, talking about, productivity and getting things done and how to overcome procrastination, stuff that game designers will still benefit from, just looking at it from different angles. And so that was kind of a big old ball of just ideas and choices, and like, let's see what works, and if it doesn't work, I don't mind changing. So we'll see. I'll give it 6 months.
Have me on to talk about imposter syndrome. That's a big one that hangs a lot of people up.
Yeah.
But a lot of designers are like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if anybody's going to like this. My game's going to suck. They're all going to make fun of me. It's like, come on, just bake it.
Yeah. And especially nowadays, social media has screwed us up so bad because our little caveman brains, we can't comprehend what we see in reality. You know what I mean? Like, we see stuff on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or whatever, and you're like, oh, why isn't that me? There must be something wrong with me. Why don't I have that? Why don't I have the money to do this, that, or the other? Or in our case, like if you're doing a Kickstarter campaign, you're looking at other people's campaigns and they made $1 million, and it's a game that's nowhere near as good as yours. It's like the art is not as good, whatever it is. And we have a hard time grasping with the reality of, oh, wait, this is that person's 12th game. they've built an audience for a decade, or this is a person that had a huge advantage going in that I don't have.
Like, or they have an IP going behind them, or they
absolutely.
have or they got hooked up with a certain influential creator. Like,
right.
They got up they're riding that tide. There's all sorts of reasons.
Exactly. And so, once you can step back and identify the reality of things, it gets a little bit easier. It's never easy. You're always going to run into, I think everything I do sucks. And I have those days like everybody else. But I don't know. I feel like sometimes you just got to lie to yourself and just be like, no, this is good, even if you don't believe it. I think it was C.S. Lewis who talked about like, act as if it is, and eventually it will be. Yes. Right. And he was talking about loving people. And he was like, if you don't love somebody, like if you hate somebody, act as if you do, like act as if you love them, and eventually you'll find a way. And it's like, okay, let's look at that from creativity standpoint. Like just act as if what you're making is good enough. And eventually, hopefully, your brain will listen, your heart will listen. But it's a process. So
fantastic. So this is the longest lead up that I've had to talking about a project. So I mean, but just establishing the pedigree, establishing how much Gabe, and in a lot of ways we're selling the person, right? There's a product, but we're also selling the person, and we're selling the idea that like this person is going to pour heart, soul, mind, experience into this product. And I have a few, like I know this is not going to be your biggest, like the opus, but this definitely feels like a culmination point. Robomon. So like Robomon is give us the pitch.
Yeah, so Robomon is a open world narrative driven game. It's all about exploration. It's all about like finding the surprises, got tons of puzzles, but at its core, you are this teenager, you're this like 17-year-old kid, that's your hero, and you get to create everything about your character. And that's one of the things I love about this game. Like whoever you want to be, you can be that. And then you're going out into the world to become this Robomon Ranger. And what that means is you have to like go out and complete all these quests and tasks and get all these certificates. And at the same time, you've got this Pokemon style battle system thing going on where you're capturing these robots, these Robomon out in the world. You're building a team, and then you're going and facing off against other kind of like gym leaders. We call them club leaders. But I had to change like all my terminology to get away from anything copyrighted by Pokemon, just like trying to avoid lawsuits at all costs, right? And so, yeah, it's a very interesting game. It's not one that people have really ever played before. It's not like, oh, it's a deck builder with this twist. Oh, it's a worker placement game, but you use dice as your workers. Like it's not any of that kind of stuff. It's, if I had to like kind of do a mishmash, it'd be like Sleeping Gods mixed with Mega Man mixed with Pokemon, right? So if any of those things are of interest to you listening to this, right, then I think the game might be for you. And it's got a lot of like point and click adventure kind of stuff where you've got this map book where you have tons of encounters, and then the numbers on the map book correlate to the adventure book with entries over there, and you've got tons of stuff going on, whether it's skill checks or conversations with NPCs, side quests, puzzles, items, shops. There's a lot going on, man. And you're right, the whole Opus idea, this is a massive project compared to the other stuff I've done.
So, so again, paint the scene. So like, okay, so Michael did the playthrough on the One Stop Co-op Shop, and he was very clear that this is like a fraction.
Oh, yeah.
And so like he had a couple of cards, and the couple of cards are like little like Pokemon type animals, and he's picking the flaming panda and whatever it is, and he's doing the like a simulated combat, and he's reading a little bit of the flavor text. So tell us where the game is. We'll talk about before the show, like where is the game exactly right now?
Yeah, so the demo copy that I've been sending out to Mike and other content creators is somewhere around 12% of the total, right? And what I sent him was something like 25, 26 map book pages. It's like 100 and something adventure book pages. I sent 30 or so Robomon. Like that's still a lot. Like that's a whole game's worth of content right there, but we're nowhere near done because like this is an epic adventure. If people keep asking how long does it take to play, it's somewhere between 30 and 40 hours. It'll take you to complete the whole thing. And that's not even like including all the little Easter eggs and side quests and everything. That's just like the main core of the game. It's somewhere in that 30 to 40 hour range. And there's an expansion too, if you want to add that on and kind of get you some post-game content and some more challenging battles and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it's a lot going on, but I found a phenomenal artist, a guy named Liam, who lives over in the UK, and he's just an incredible pixel artist. And so he just comes up with these maps and these assets and these characters and NPCs and all that stuff. And it's so much fun to work on that it's been really enjoyable. This has been the most fun project I've ever done, even though it's the most overwhelming. It's the biggest by far and most expensive and most like mess with you as far as like you look at the numbers of like how much
Mm-hmm.
stuff costs and everything. Like I normally make $20 games that take 20 minutes to play. That's what I've been making for years. And now I've got this $80 game that takes 30 hours to play. You're like, okay, this is a whole nother level, but it's a ton of fun. And I think
Mm-hmm.
once people really, it's hard for people to get it, right? Because again, it's not like, oh, it's a deck builder with
Right.
this other thing. Like, no, this is a game unlike pretty much anything else out there. When I say open world, I don't mean you could go anywhere. I mean, like at any moment, you can be like, I want to turn the page 5 pages and go to a whole new map.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that, right? And it's not limited by, oh, I can only move 2 spaces on a turn, or I have to worry about how many resources or how much oxygen or how many, whatever. Like, no, you just go anywhere, do anything,
Right.
have fun, and then see what happens in your adventure.
Is there a through line? Because the open world has to do that dance,
Yeah.
right? Because there's different type personalities. Some people want to explore every corner. Some people want their main quest and then you get to dip into stuff. So how does that work out?
Yeah, so there is a main story. There's a couple of main stories. There's one that's like your personal main story where you're trying to become this Robomon Ranger, and so you're trying to figure out how do I get these certificates, and it's I got to go over here and do this. I got to talk to that person. I got to complete this quest. You get all these experience points, and eventually you get different certificates that give you in-game bonuses and ways that change the game a little bit. But then there's also the competitive side. It's like, okay, if you want to do the kind of Pokemon style, go from gym to gym and beat the leader and win, you can do that. So there's other like a second thing you can do. But then there's also a little subplot going on, and I won't ruin that here, but there might be some big bad evil guy trying to take over the world, because always. Sure. And so, there's stuff like that as well. So you've kind of got 3 major things that you can do. And, along the way, I feel like most people are going to kind of dabble and do this and do that, that over there. And as they, encounter things on different maps, you just kind of do a third at a time, right? As opposed to doing one path focused, right? But it's kind of like, open world video games, like The Witcher 3 is one of my favorites, right? You can look on the map and go, ooh, that looks interesting. I want to go way off over there. And you get on your horse and you ride way off over there, and you find a level 50 enemy and you're level 5 and it just slaughters you. That's this game. Like, you can find yourself in a situation like, I am under leveled. Like, I should not be here. But you can, if you want to go there, feel free, have fun, have at it.
Right. And then you'll bank that for later. It's like, oh, that's over there. And then when I'm geared up, and gives you a goal, it's like, okay, that guy kicked my butt. I get, I got to level my Robomon. So in terms of the actual mechanism of combat, like it's a card battler, right? I mean, like Pokemon fans are going to be familiar with card battling. Right. It doesn't work like Pokemon, the actual card game, but like you're used to collecting your cards, picking who you want to actually represent you in the combat, and you're doing some card combo stuff to resolve the battle. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So I wanted to make sure that the combat system was distinguished enough away from Pokemon so that it was a totally different experience. Right. You can look at this game and know exactly what it's inspired by. Right. It's pretty daggum obvious. But I wanted to make sure that it was still its own world, it had its own lore, its own backstory. And so all of that is unlike anything Pokemon's ever even thought about doing. And then the combat system is when you're in a competitive battle. So when you're fighting other Robomon trainers, competitors, whatever, it's this grid system. It's this tactical, square grid that you've got your tokens out there, and then your Robomon, you've got cards, and it tells you their movement speed. It gives you the turn order. It gives you different abilities and how many hit points, how much energy they have, all that. And then you're kind of moving tactically around these maps, and there's terrain and there's things to think about. And I'm actually I had some really good feedback from people in the GameFound campaign, and they're like, hey, have you thought about these ways to make combat a little more interesting? Which is they've given me one thing I love about crowdfunding is like you get this collaboration and people are like, hey, if you thought about this, I was like, that's a great idea and I can add that in. But anyway, so you run around this map and it's got an AI system where the AI is actually pretty smart. Like it tries to kill you. Like the enemy wants to win too. Like your opponents also want to win. And so, I'm trying to do everything I can to make every fight feel interesting and challenging, and every Robomon is different. They've all got special things about them where they feel unique. It's not like, oh, this one does a water attack, but it does 2 damage instead of 1 damage. It's like, no, it's boring. And so trying to make them all feel interesting, and there's going to be like 80 by the end of this thing. And so that's been fun to figure out how to make them all different enough, but not crazy. But
I mean, we're talking Final Fantasy Tactics type, or Disgaea, these video games that have the terrains and the different units, and they can kind of like move them on all that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Not to that level. You obviously can't get nearly as complicated as you can with a video game. You're having to do all the math in your own head, right? But trying to make it interesting. Every battle is a 2v2, and so you've always got 2 of your Robomon out there, and so there's more to think about than just that one thing, and you can kind of set up your
Right.
your other one, so like, I'm going to do this on this turn, and then that's going to set up my other Robomon on that turn. And so there's a few more things to think about. And again, I didn't want battles to take forever, right? I wanted people to be able to. That's another thing about Pokemon and other games like this. Sometimes you just it's a grind. You're like, oh, I got to do another one. I'm just going to hit A over and over again. I'm going to win. I'm going to get some money. Whatever. I wanted it to be interesting. So there's not a ton of battles, but at the same time, each one is interesting. There's a challenge or something different about each one. It's just different things to think about, and it's been a lot of fun, man. Just to kind of come up with the different battle maps and stuff like that. And there's nothing as far as like speed. So initially, the game had like separate mats, and when you would go into a battle, you'd have to like find the terrain tiles and put them on the mat and kind of figure things out. And you have to look at a little chart, and it just took a long time. And so what we started doing to fix that was in the adventure book. Whenever you come to a battle, you open up to that page, and it's already set up. Like the adventure book is the battle mat. And the terrain is already printed on there, and it tells you exactly what you need to know. All the information's there. What do you get if you win? What happens if you lose? And so you can literally just start playing almost immediately. You find the Robomon tokens that then go on the mat and they're going to move around. You find those, you're pretty much ready to go. And so that sped the thing up a lot. And so that was another thing I was thinking about. I was like, how can I make this game just move quicker? Like people want to, they want to go. They don't want to waste time with setup. And so that was another thing. Is like early on, can I make a game as big as this that you can set up on your table in 2 minutes or less? Because a lot of games like this, they have so many resources. There's so many little bags to open. There's so many cards to pull out and different things. It's like, okay, I don't want to do any of that. I want to open the box. I want to play.
Like you mentioned, Sleeping Gods. Like Sleeping Gods is this massive production. You have 8 characters, and all the 8 characters have to go, and you have the items, and you have you have to keep track of what you've done. And it's a bear. Like it's one of those things where you have to leave it laid out, and if you pack it up, you're not starting that thing again.
Right.
I mean, it's an immersive experience. I love that game. But,
it's one of the best games of all time. And it was actually, Sleeping Gods is what finally helped me overcome the main obstacle in creating this game. Because I started working on this game 5 years ago. It was a totally different theme. Everything, a lot of it was different. But like the core open world idea was there. I couldn't figure out how to crack the code, though. It's like, how do you do it? And then Sleeping Gods came out. And I was like, the map book. That's how you do it. You have a book of maps, and you can go anywhere you want, and you leave this page, go to that next page. That's how you do it. And that was really the catalyst to get me here 2.5 years later of actually having a game, available for sale.
The funny thing is, like, I had Ryan on the show to talk about the previous game, Near and Far. So, and Near and Far had the map book, and I think it was it may have been the first game with a map book, because usually with like tiles or something other thing. And the way he found it was like, I figured exactly what it was. Like he was playing like a storybook game. So the storybook was open, and like someone had like fitted a bunch of like tokens and on the storybook, and it looked like a map. And it's like, why don't we do that?
Yeah.
And it was a total accident. And all of a sudden you have Stuff Fables, and you have this game, you have, Sleeping Gods, you have, Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion did the map book. Like all of a sudden it's like this whole, like, wow, like we just opened up a whole realm of adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it has spawned some amazing ideas off of it, and other, just phenomenal games. But at the same time, one great thing about Sleeping Gods is you can look at it and go, okay, these are the amazing parts. Let's do those. But then here's the things that aren't as amazing. How do we fix those? And like you're talking about with the setup, it takes a long time. So how do we fix that? And so I got rid of basically all tokens. Like there's only 2 resource tokens in the game, even though the game has like 20 different resources.
Right.
Because I was like, okay, let's learn from tabletop RPGs where you have the character sheet, and you don't have a million tokens. You just have a piece of paper, and you get a new resource. You just mark it down, and you take your pencil, and if you have to erase, you erase. You write the new number, or you just use tick marks or whatever you want to use, and then you're good. And so one that makes setup immensely fast. The teardown also super fast, but also the saving of the game. You're basically saving as you go. You don't have to take a bunch of time at the end to take a picture of everything or like write down a bunch of stuff. It's already written down. It's good to go. And so like, all right, I'm done playing. You literally just kind of put it back in the box. And you're done because you've already saved it effectively. And so, I was able to learn a lot from Sleeping Gods, some of these other games that have come off of that.
So, I mean, we have the combat, we have the Robomon, like, the collectible, got to get them all, the whole thing. Is it possible to get them all?
Yes. In the base, like so you run into some situations where, like, let's say 5 Robomon need a certain item to be able to upgrade to like their next it's not evolution. These are robots; they don't evolve. You have to find blueprints, you find parts, and then you can upgrade them into better, bigger, faster, stronger versions. Well, let's say 5 of them need the same resource to be able to upgrade. Well, there's only 3 of those
in the whole game.
Yeah. Right. Now, once you get to the post game, and there's some other things that open up, and you've got some different. Yes, you can finish everything in the post, like after the story, after you become a ranger, stuff like that. But in the actual main part of the game, you're going to make some choices. It's like, do I want to upgrade this water type, or do I want to upgrade this fire type? Because I've only got enough resources to do one or the other, and so it creates some fun choices, and also creates replayability. Because like maybe next time when I do another playthrough, my team is totally different because I make totally different choices about which ones I put on my team, which ones I upgrade. And so that was another thing I was really thoughtful about is, one of the great things about these types of games is to go back and play it again, even though you know the story, the puzzle, stuff like that. But how you play it out can be vastly different, and just trying out different teams and stuff like that.
Oh, I didn't play Shining Force again. I didn't play Phantasy Star again. Of course I did, people.
Right.
So we have the combat system, we have the tactics system, we have huge adventure. Like we only have a fraction of what is happening with the adventure stuff. Are you writing it all yourself, or did you hire some help?
Yeah. So all the story stuff has been me, and then Liam and I have worked to get together, like coming up with different like story beats and moments. All that writing has been mine. But I also hired someone named Jono Naito, who has been just phenomenal and did a ton of the like skill checks. And kind of you've got strength checks and agility checks. It's kind of like Powered by the Apocalypse, that 2d6 system, add your modifier.
Right.
And so in your character creation at the beginning of the game, first thing you do is you create a character, and you give him or her whatever stats you want. You've zeros in this, +1, -1, +2. And then so Jono created a ton of the skill checks, which was super helpful because that's not like story. It's just kind of like these extra little flavorful things. And so did a great job with that. But yeah, all the writing other than that has been me, and that was another thing I had to focus. It's like, all right, I gotta start saying no to things. I need more time in my life, because also my family would like to see me at some point. So get outside and exercise.
It definitely shows, because Mike gave you the compliment that like the grammar was all correct, and he has enough prototypes to see where the state of things are. Yeah. And the fact that this was a little bit advanced is definitely a credit to you. So a huge package. Right. So I think we have gotten a 360. You've answered all my questions. Is there anything else in terms of a final pitch for Robomon?
Yeah. So again, going back to the whole idea, like, what is this game? Because I've had so many people send me messages. Because if you say anything is like Pokemon, they immediately have an idea in their head what that means. Right. And typically that's like a 1v1 dueling card game, or it's something, back and forth trading card style or something like that. And this ain't that. Right. This is. No. And again, it's an open world, like think open world video game, but as a board game. And it's not something people can fully grasp because it hasn't really happened in this way before. And that is a huge challenge from a marketing standpoint. I keep running into questions where I'm like, oh, I thought that was obvious, but apparently a lot of people, they're not quite getting it, quote unquote. And so the main pitch I have to people is just give it a shot. Like, dive a little bit deeper than you normally would, because this isn't the typical, it's a worker placement, but it's got this twist. Like, no, this is a brand new, it's a mixed media experience. There's music, there's comic book style, like cutscenes in the.
I didn't even mention the music. You have a whole like side thing that you can do a QR code. You get some fantasy music. Yeah,
every time you go to a new map or you're in a different battle, it's got a QR code. You scan it with your phone, and it pops up, very like 16-bit retro style music that fits the moment, fits the mood of that area. And so again, it's this like mixed media thing. The puzzles are super interesting. There's been a lot of fun to create. I hired some puzzle makers to do those. And it's a lot going on, but it's this cohesive experience. And when I sat down and really thought through, what do I want to create? This is 2.5 years ago. Like, what do I want to make? I was like, I don't want to just make a board game. Like, that's not what I'm doing. This is an experience. This is something that I wanted people to have never experienced anything like this before. Now, it's got some common things, it's got systems that you're familiar with and things like that. It's not just completely brand new, never heard of it. But the package as a whole is something that I feel like, unfortunately, it's going to take a lot of people like playing it to go, okay, there it is. Now I get it. And so, the sell on the front end is a little bit more challenging. But, the people that get it already are super excited about it. The people who have played it, they really enjoy it, really love it. And so, yeah, I guess my main pitch is just give it a little bit more of a chance than you normally would. Like when you go to a Kickstarter campaign, GameFound, you can typically scroll down the page and go, oh, I understand what this is.
Right.
you're probably gonna have to do a little bit more with this one because it's something a little bit different.
I mean, I only know this because I saw the video from Mike and from, like looking at the box, I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And the box doesn't sell itself. The art doesn't necessarily sell itself.
Yeah.
I think, the Robomon and all that kind of stuff, because like I don't associate it with 1v1. I associate it with Gotta Collect Them All.
Yeah.
So like the collectible aspect of it, I think is a selling point, at least for me. And then knowing that there's an adventure story behind it, there's, that at least that's what appealed to me. So I imagine you're getting all sorts of feedback about like, okay, I like this and I like this and I like this. And then encapsulating all that is difficult. However, as we record this, you have funded. So
yes,
I'm assuming, and was it a day one fund or did it?
Yeah. So it was like 16 hours, something like that. So yeah, and the wee hours of the morning, the early morning, I was still awake. Luckily, it was like 2 a.m. or something like that. But yeah, it funded day one, which is always nice. And again, it's interesting. Like I've run several campaigns at this point, and you always hope that you have $1 million on day one.
Sure.
And it's just interesting to see how campaigns can be so different. You know what I mean? But what's been really fun with this one, and it's not something I've ever experienced before, because I've run, most of my games have been, $20, 20-minute experiences. One thing was kind of funny. Somebody was like, "Hey, I thought this was going to be like one of your other games. Can you put this game into a $20 box?" It's like, no, no, this is a $200 game, if we're being totally honest. But the comment section of this for this campaign has been amazing. Like I've never had so many people so passionate about stretch goals, about ideas, about adding things, about tweaking things. And some of it, like some people have written dissertation length comments. You're like, wow, you took a long time out of your day to sit down and type all this out. Now, some of it is amazing, and some of it is like you just don't have any idea what's gone into the development of this game, because I tried that a year ago and it's a terrible idea. But just having so many people excited about it, man, it's just been a lot of fun. So I'm really pumped for the community that's going to come out of this. And whether the campaign, has 1,000 backers or 10,000 backers, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, the community, I think, is going to lay the groundwork for a lot of really cool things to come later. So even this campaign's not going to make mind-boggling, life-changing money. That's okay. I feel like the community that grows up around it is going to create a long-term thing, that foundation that I can build a lot of really cool stuff on in the future. And so, anyone listening to this, you want to come be part of that. It's not just a game. This is this community kind of building this thing together. And right now the stretch goals, people are deciding, do they want the giraffe or do they want the rhinoceros? Do they want to visit the spooky lighthouse or the submarine? Like, I love the collaborative nature of these campaigns, because you let backers decide, like, what do y'all want? And then let me give you that, as opposed to me just assuming or guessing. And it's been a lot of fun.
And it's nice to hear, because a lot of the crowdfunding buzz has been a little bit cynical. It's like, because it's been dominated by like Marvel Zombicide and like these kind of pre-packaged games. And then everything happened with like the shipping and, so there's been a lot of like negativity about it. It's good to see that there's projects that are kind of answering to the original idea of crowdfunding. Like there's a little bit of throwback here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing that helps is kind of what you're talking about early on in the show, is a lot of this is attached to me as a person. Sure. Like, it's easy to hate CMON, because who is that? Like, that is a corporate, like that is a publicly traded company on a stock market. You know what I mean? Like, so they're easy to hate. And when they do something that's kind of sketchy or kind of like frustrating, it's not a big deal to get in the comments and just blast them, because who are they? Who are their families? I don't know. Who is their dog? Who cares? But when you have a project from an indie publisher where they are the face, I feel like it's a little bit harder to hate. Now if you steal all their people's money, obviously that changes things. But that's my advice for any creator is put yourself out there, right? Try to attach things to you as a human being, and let people see your face, on the campaign page. Do some videos where it's you and the camera talking about the passion and excitement you have for the project. It goes a long way.
You did the unboxing and you talked through it, and there you were.
Exactly. And my daughter and I, we had this great video about creating a character. We're having fun and joking and messing with each other. And, it makes it human. It makes it people oriented, not just corporate, oh, this is just another, business making a product. Like, no, there's something deeper going on. And then it creates community, and it's been a lot of fun.
Although that doesn't come without its pitfalls. Right, because there is, that's a part of the reason why people are gun shy, especially in this kind of newer, more cynical time of like, you put your face on there, but then you expose yourself to whatever. I mean, have you gotten a little bit of that, or is it like a mix, or what's your experience there?
That's a good question. I don't know. One thing I always come back to is when someone writes something negative, one of my first questions is, where is this person from? Right. Is English their first language? That's one of the questions I've really like found myself asking all the time, because sometimes people, and I know this as a second language speaker, speaking Spanish, I don't necessarily know all the nuances of speaking Spanish. And so like if I have to say something kinder or even angrier, I don't necessarily know which word to use. And so that's one thing, is just stepping back and going, okay, maybe this person didn't know that this was kind of a rude way to say it. Right. They're not meaning anything by it. This is the word they knew and this is the word they used. And I am taking it like I am changing it in my brain. It's not what they meant. It's what I am assuming. Right. So that's been one thing that really helps. But also just assuming that the person doesn't have ill intent. They don't know me. They don't know anything about me. Like all they know is what they've seen online or, something they've heard or whatever. And just letting it go, kind of going back to the whole imposter syndrome. I feel like we take in so much of the negative and then we'll just pass over the positive. Like one negative comment will stick with us for days, weeks, years, decades. But then all the good stuff people say, we don't believe it. Like, let's switch that around. Like say something negative, like, I don't know about that. That maybe that's true.
Yeah. In psychotherapy, we say bad stuff is sticky like Velcro, good stuff is slippery like Teflon.
Yes, that's a great way to look at it. And so almost tricking your brain into flipping that around. And again, like I said earlier, sometimes you kind of have to lie to yourself for a little bit, eventually believe it. Right. But no, I haven't seen too much, and I try to stay.
It's very easy to hold on to good within a lot of good.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing is I try to stay apolitical on things. Like I don't post my politics or my ideas, ideologies, whatever online, because why? Like that's not what I'm trying to do. And because I know no matter what I say, 50% of the other, of the folks are going to disagree and look at me differently, good or bad. Right. And so that's another thing I've really thought more and more about is trying to avoid getting caught up into debates and stuff, political thing. Like I hate social media. If I'm being totally honest, like the only reason I'm there is for board game stuff.
Right.
And so I have to try to do my best to avoid getting sucked in to all the other, because I'm not there for the other. Now, some people go there for the other, and that's totally fine. You do you. My thing is I'm here for game design. I'm here to see what cool games are coming out and see what people are playing and see, to feel that community. That's it. And then just kind of sticking to that, which is extremely difficult sometimes, because you see something and you're like, ooh, I need to say something. Do I though? do I? Is this going to ruin like the next 6 hours of my day? So let me just go watch some board game reviews and think about what game I'm working on and how to make it better. And so that's another thing. If anybody is thinking about, doing this thing and kind of putting your face on something, getting yourself out there, is just be real honest with yourself, but also just think through what are your actual goals. Yeah. And if your goals involve politics, then dive in. If they don't, then maybe take a step back and just kind of reassess, what's going on.
Yeah. And I obviously I come at it from a much different perspective because I have all sorts of different stuff going on. However, the way I try to think about these things is I want to take any, like that word politics, right? It's like, okay, what are people afraid of? Like people are afraid of like stuff, getting told what to do.
Right.
And, getting games taken away. Right. And so it's like, all right, we're not about any of this stuff. Right. I am here to give you more games. And I'm here to give you more diverse games. And what I like about the approach with Roman is clearly you're giving people, like you put thoughts into something different. I'm giving you something more than you had already. I'm not just doing the same thing over and over again. That's what makes people the maddest. Yeah. Is clearly as when it's the same over and over again. And that's insanity, right? You do the same thing over and over again. You get worse results, right? But you're doing something different. You're taking a risk. And I think on a certain level, because people have that core desire for like, I just want more stuff. Yeah. More fun, and you're being honest and you're doing all the other stuff about it. I think it's the proof's in the pudding. You're funded, and it's a real funding. It's not like a fake funding. It's this game is getting made. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're at like 86,000 as of this recording, and that will make it. That's not going to help me pay any of my bills, but that will make the game. Right. And so,
right.
Hopefully we'll get a little bit more. And so I don't have to pick up a part-time job or anything, but
is the intention to go to retail at some point?
I mean, eventually. So as an indie publisher, first of all, I'm going to take a step back and jump off of what you were saying a second ago. One thing I love about what you're doing is because it's so frustrating. A lot of people do go online and they go, you should think this way.
Right.
X, Y, Z, whatever political debate of the day is, my viewpoint is the viewpoint. And if you don't think like me, you're stupid. One thing I love about what you're doing in the space is you're creating conversation. It's let's chat about it. Let's have a conversation. Let's not get emotional or angry or whatever. Let's put the facts and the ideas and the details out there, and let's let the best ideas float to the top, and let's talk about it.
Right.
And no matter what you believe, whatever end of the spectrum you're on, dead set in the middle, whatever, conversation is the key. And so that's one thing I just want to say for a second. I love about what you bring to the table. And I know a lot of people don't see it that way. And a lot of people get really upset and they jump, all over you about stuff. But at the end of the day, I feel like you're creating a space for conversation, and that's where change happens. That's where life comes from. So anyway,
I think Mutual Admiration Society. Let's do
it. So I had a really good conversation today about this with a guy, and as we were talking about the new Disney stuff, so much of it feels like content, not art. It's, we got to get another show out next quarter. We have to justify people, having all these subscriptions to our platform. Therefore, we have to put out this many new shows a year, a quarter, whatever. And so much of it, it feels that way. It feels like it's half baked. It feels like the CGI needed another 6 months. There's so many things you're like, this is content.
Well, that actually, the articles came out about that. Like, so when She-Hulk came out, as you record the She-Hulk and She-Hulk, you could tell the CGI is at a level below.
Yeah.
And the artist actually came out and made public record saying the crunch is impossible.
Yeah.
Like, we're making 3 movies a year, we're making 5 shows a year, and they're always changing things. So I like that I'm throwing away stuff, and I'm, they're always like, very busybody type things. And like, I'm literally running to premieres with a USB key with the final version of the movie. The actors are on the red carpet, but the movie is not uploaded yet because I was working on it last night. Like, seriously, like to that point. So like, that's and talk about the increased cynicism, right? I think that's where the cynicism comes from, is this push for more content. And we feel like we're getting stuff shoved in our throats like a goose.
Yeah.
And that's what happened in the 90s with the comic books. Like, people got tired of it, and like the bubble burst. And so we're afraid of like in all these spheres of the bubble bursting. Right. Yeah. And what's the antidote to that? The antidote to that is actual creativity and community.
Exactly. And so that's how I'm looking at Robomon. That's how I look at a lot of like indie publishing, whether it's video games, board games, YouTube, whatever, movies,
retail.
It's art.
We're talking about retail.
We were talking about retail. That's right. Is pushing for art. Right. So really taking the time, like I said, I've been working on this for 2.5 years just to get it to this point to launch on GameFound. Right. And it's got another year or so of development, because like everything's in place. The systems are in place. Everything is designed. Everything is like, we know where we're going. And now it's just a matter of the writing and the art to put it all together. And then, fun with manufacturing, and hopefully shipping will be not quite as bananas a year from now. But as far as retail goes, like, the money is an interesting thing, because like, you want to be able to print 10,000 copies, right? You sold 6,000 in your campaign, you print an extra 3,000 or 4,000 that hopefully, you get really good reviews and everybody wants to buy it, and you sell out in a few months. But it takes a crap ton of money to do that, And so with a project like this, which is so art heavy, the art alone is tens and I don't even want to, I need to like sit down and really break down. It's basically like, how much money do we bring in? And then we're going to kind of figure out budgets and things as far as like the final and like what we can really dive into versus now we're going to have to take a step back because we just don't quite have the money. But like, this is not a project that's made $1 million. It's not something that's going to have 5,000 extra copies. That's another thing. I'm not saying that to like try to twist somebody's arm into backing it now, but like, there's just not going to be a ton of extra money to print a ton of extra copies. And so I guess what I'm looking at is okay, if let's say we have 3,000 backers by the end, okay, I might only print 4,500, and then that's it, and then like, because that's all the money there is. Like, when you're paying $100,000 to manufacture a game, and you got to ship it. Like, it's just a lot going on, right? And so there might not be very many in retail. And now the hope is that, your game comes out and people love it and you have really good reviews, and then you immediately do another crowdfunding campaign, and then a whole lot more people come on board. Sleeping Gods is a great example of that, with Ryan Lockett coming in doing like the part 2 kind of thing, and a lot more people. He made an extra $1 million on that. Jay Cormier did a phenomenal campaign with Mind MGMT and did it that way. A lot of great reviews came out. He sold out, immediately did a Kickstarter and made a ton of money. And so, that's kind of a blueprint that I'm looking at as well. But what that means is there's probably just not a lot of retail copies. That's a long-winded way to say probably not very many.
Well, because I got a comment, right? I think I saw one of the either I don't know if it was on our YouTube channel or your thing, but like they was wondering about retail because this is a person who doesn't want to engage in crowdfunding and
Yeah.
wants more of a sure product and everything.
Oh, sure.
And
I
like
understand.
just the idea that you put this much thought into it is appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand that mentality, right? Why would I give somebody $80 for something I'm not going to get for a year? Right. Assuming a year is accurate and knowing Kickstarter, knowing the nature of things, is more like a year and a half, maybe 2 years.
I'm holding up the box, the Carnival Zombie Second Edition. I backed this in 2019.
Oh, dang.
It's 2022 and I got it yesterday.
Wow. Hey, bravo to them though for seeing it
sticking
through,
it in, and they didn't charge the extra for shipping. They just waited and waited and waited. It's like I will be proud to do the review for this game because I want this game.
Yeah.
At least the creator to be like, give some shout out, be like, thanks for sticking with it.
Exactly. And that's my mentality too. It's like if I tell you I'm going to deliver something, come hell or high water, it's going to get to your house. Yes. Like if I got to go out and work at McDonald's, and whatever, just to make some extra money to finally pay off that shipping charge, whatever, that's what I'm going to do. And if I tell somebody something, I'm going to do it. And I just want people to know that, like, I give you my word on these things. Because trust is hard to come by. That's one of the things for new creators. Like trust is really a much bigger currency than money as far as like starting out. And so doing anything you can to just build that trust. Again, that's why it's helpful to have you out in front and you as a person, like, hey, this is me. You can trust as a human being. I'm not just some business.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, it's a hard thing.
Man. Ad break. No ads in Shelf Stories. No ads.
But it's super challenging. For sure. I mean, the world is so different now, and we'll see what it looks like a year from now as things kind of hopefully calm back down. We'll see what inflation looks like. Yeah. We'll see what the supply chains are continuing to do to paper. It's been an interesting thing to kind of figure out with manufacturers. Sure. It's like when there's a shortage on paper, all of a sudden everything else gets messed up, and then international fulfillment's been crazy. And anyway, it's a lot to navigate. But hey, that's part of it.
This is Robomon. This is a open world, collect them all, robot battling game, adventure style. We didn't even mention 1 to 2 players. Yeah. And you do the 2-player cooperative. So it's a low player kind of experience. Play it with your wife, play it with your spouse, I should say, play it with your child. And, it's going to have a lot of content. It's going to be 30 hours and it is not quite like what you've experienced on the tabletop. So that's kind of that's what I'm getting in terms of the final sell.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So please go and check out the link in the show notes for the GameFound link. We're not on Kickstarter, but we're on GameFound. And we're funded. So you are going to get a game come hell or high water, or Gabe working at McDonald's.
That's right.
Gabe Barrett, thank you so much for stopping by the show.
Jason, really appreciate you inviting me on, man. This has been a lot of fun. I feel like we covered way more topics than I anticipated, but I think it's a good thing. That's a good problem.
I love conversations. What am I going to talk about? Awesome. If you can change your mind, you can change the world, people. So until next time, hey, everybody.